Air Canada has reached a tentative agreement with its flight attendants, ending a labor dispute that impacted thousands of travelers in Canada and abroad. For more on this, let's bring in Peggy Nash, Executive Director of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Peggy, I'm curious to get your reaction to how everything unfolded, but specifically the defiance of the union in face of direct orders from the federal government. What's your take on all that played out?
Well, it was pretty clear that the workers had enormous frustration. They had not been able to bargain a new collective agreement for over 10 years. So think about how much prices have gone up and how stressed they must have been, especially many of the younger employees who are at the bottom of the pay scale with below poverty level wages. So tremendous frustration. And anybody who travels knows there are delays and how crowded flights are these days. And all of that groundwork before and after the flight takes off was unpaid work. So tremendous frustration. And they had a 99.7% strike vote. So clearly they were very united, very determined. It did not surprise me that they were so firm on the picket line. And I have to ask myself, how did both the company and the federal government misread this so badly? Because I wonder if the whole strike could have been avoided if they had really focused more on getting a settlement right from the get-go.
I think a lot of people agree that just the overall public relations and the communications from the union and its members was extremely effective. And at times when there are these kind of labor disputes like we just saw with Canada Post, oftentimes there's a lot of frustration towards the people striking and the unions. That wasn't necessarily the case in this particular situation. So I was wondering if you can comment a little bit on the effectiveness of the public relations from the union, but also how you think the government fared in all of this as well.
The union was very focused on their two main issues of wages and pay for groundwork. And their members were clearly educated and united behind them and firm in their resolve. And I think what also helped the union is that for the traveling public, there's a lot of frustration for people who feel that generally their experience in air travel has not been that great. So I think a lot of sympathy for the people who work for the airline. And, it just seemed that maybe the company was relying on the government coming in and trying to force people back to work through an arbitration. And again, I think that misread the situation very badly. And, the government has used this clause in the law 7 times over the last year. And it's never good because it doesn't allow workers to really shape their own collective agreement with their employer, to hammer that out. And it can sour labor relationships, and that can continue for a period of time. So it's never a good idea, and I think the federal government really needs to rethink using that clause. It's just not very democratic.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would echo your sentiment, forcing private companies and their workers back to work. But I'm curious, given what just played out, how do you think this impacts the overall landscape of labor relations, given the fact that you've got the federal government that ordered these people back to work and union said no? And I'm wondering, does that make the government look weak in these situations?
Well, I think what it says to workers is that when you stand up for your rights and when you fight, you can win. And that's a very powerful message. And what it also shows is that when you stand up to fight, other unions can support you and the public can support you. So that's why I think the free collective bargaining process is the best one. And I don't know if this makes the government look weak. I think it makes them look a bit tone deaf, that they really didn't read the room. They didn't see how frustrated, how understandably frustrated these workers were. Many of them have less than 5 years seniority and so are really at the bottom of the pay scale, most living in major cities across the country, which, as everyone knows, are the most expensive places to live. So, I just think they need to be more thoughtful and careful and respectful of people's basic rights when it comes to labor relations.
Peggy Nash, we appreciate your time and perspective as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jamie.